Cosmic here, and welcome back to another Legends of Runeterra video. First and foremost, I want to say I do apologize for the uploads. Not as frequent as I'd like to, but given it's a new season, given I work full-time, I have to focus on hitting Masters first. And then once I get into Masters, usually that's when I spend more time brewing and memeing it up and all that good stuff. Good news is, I just hit Diamond. I hit with a 65% win rate with my particular deck, the Aurelion Sol deck that we're going to be talking about in this video. But then otherwise, it's going to take me a little bit longer to get to Masters. So I will still be uploading some more videos this week. They'll just be more actual playthrough videos instead of the typical deck preview plus games I've been doing. So please look forward to those. You know, it's not my typical uploads until I get to Masters, but it's kind of the Road to Masters series right from now until then. So with all that out of the way, what are we going to be talking about today, right? So, this was like the day before the set went live. I had tweeted out, it was a massive thread. I just grabbed this screenshot about, you know, how do we build the Aurelion Sol deck? So today is just going to be an entire breakdown of this tweet, talking about what worked, what didn't work. You know, I went with the ramp package. We saw some other brews, and really just kind of this overall breakdown and talking about the core ideas behind the deck, just to have more of a like workshop style of video than necessarily a, you know, here's some cards that I liked and here's, you know, a couple games. So with that mentioned, there's not going to be any games previewed in today's video. It is just going to be strictly a discussion based, but, you know, in the very near future, actually the next videos I upload again will be more of the here's some games that I've played, you know, every night on stream. Now again, if you're looking for more daily content, I do stream Monday through Friday at the Twitch link kind of above there. I'm actually including Saturdays now, which Saturdays will be, until I hit Masters, dedicated to Legends of Runeterra, but then after that, it'll be more of a side quest Saturday where I'm playing some other games that I'm personally excited for, be it PSO2, Marvel's Avengers, Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Genshin Impact at the end of the month, stuff like that. So, very long intro out of the way. Sorry about that. There's just been a lot going on that, of course, I've been more active on Twitter, but let's actually break this down. So, the tweet itself broke it down into 5 different parts, so we're going to be going through each one of these, what I liked, what I didn't like, or I guess what worked and what didn't work, kind of a, you know, strategy behind it, and then, you know, what does this really mean for the future, which is, I'm just going to spoil that right now. In my opinion, there's 2 different ways to build Aurelion Sol. You can either go for a more board-heavy style of focus, where Cosmic Inspiration is going to be a very real win con, or you just go for the more traditional ramp package, which is what got me to Diamond. It's got quite a few people to Masters as well, where you just kind of ramp up into Aurelion Sol, play some other threats, flip them, and then just win through value. So that itself is going to bring us to our first point, being the ideal number of ramp cards. So in this case, it's going to be, you know, we have Faces of the Old Ones, Warding Stones, and Catalyst of Aeons. At least right now, these are the ramp pieces. And what I mean by that is that they accelerate your mana. So, you know, if you ever watch the stream or, you know, have seen some of my games, I always refer to it as +1 or +2, meaning if I resolve a Catalyst of Aeons and my opponent is also on ramp but misses it, I will consider that a +1. Generally, you know, assuming average draws for each person, if you are +2 on your opponent, meaning that you've got to resolve 2 additional ramp spells, and again, each person is drawing fairly average, you should win the game. That is a little bit more of an oversimplification, but at least in my games, and that's over 100 games that I've played from, those weren't all Aurelion Sol decks, to be fair, but I played over 100 games now from Plat to Diamond, and that's been more or less the key theme that I've realized. Now, the key thing that I want to talk about and this part of it is just talking about, okay, did turbo ramp work out, which means all 9, so you're running 3 copies of each of these, or is there just a more refined, you know, what War Mothers would run, which was 3 Warding Stones and 3 Catalyst of Aeons? And at least within the games that I've played, yes, turbo Aurelion Sol is very fun to play. It's very high rolly, but I think that the 3 extra cards that you have to commit to it and Faces the Old One just ultimately isn't worth it. Yes, I was still winning with it. Yes, I was still climbing, but in my personal preference, I'd rather have other cards like Troll Chant, where you can break spell shields and play some other strategies. That said, I will say I still really like Faces of the Old One. There was actually a Trundle Fiora deck, and it turns out the Fiora was just totally a bait, but they were playing a ramp deck that had Faces of the Old One and Catalyst of Aeons, and it had Tiana the Crown Guard, which is the only high-costed card I saw. I'm sure they had more, but they just absolutely obliterated me with it. Now, why do I mention that I like Faces of the Old One? The biggest issue with the Aurelion Sol deck is either version, if you're playing Turbo Ramp or just more traditional, you cheating into mana 4. So, right, with Faces of the Old One, let's say it triggers, you go from mana 2, on your next turn you have mana 4. You don't really have any strong threats to play. So, yes, you're ramping up. Yes, it's nice to bank the spell mana, But what have you really done? Not a whole lot. And yes, you can argue that with like Spacey Sketcher and some other like low-cost cards, you can still make some kind of value out of there. But unless you're playing like the Troll Ravager, which I ultimately did not like for Aurelion Sol style of decks, the 4-drop 3/5 Regenerator, if you behold an 8+, it kind of sucks. That's just how it is, right? Face the Old One feels really awkward. Now, I'm not saying that's the only card that you want to accelerate into, right? Now, this is where I want to say, I think there are some other strategies that we haven't seen yet, which might just end up being troll pairing. So like Trundle plus the troll packages plus Face the Old Ones and something else, right? Whatever that something else might be, that's kind of the million-dollar question. But ramping from 2 to 4 has been very good in that deck, and I could see more people kind of using this strategy. But at least for Aurelion Sol, and at least for the decks that I would recommend playing, Warding Stones and Catalyst of Aeons really were, or I should say continue to be, the bread and butter of overall ramp decks and really where you want to be. Again, going from 3 to 5 is significantly stronger than going from 2 to 4 in this case, and at least what I would recommend at the end of the day. So, ideal ramp in this case, 6 versus 9 and what have you. I definitely think the correct answer is going to be 6. Moving on from there, we have the number of invokes needed, or I should say necessary, meaning in targeted versus open. So this one's a little bit more complex. So Aurelion Sol, he makes Celestials free when you level them up, right? So it's always nice to have some kind of backup plan to that, meaning if you get to let level up condition happen, you need to have some other kind of value that's going to work off of it. And early on, I said that star shaping was absolutely insane and continues to be absolutely insane. I'm pretty sure most people would agree if you've been playing this past week. But the one that I rated high but undervalued in my own deck, if that makes sense, is Spacey Sketcher, which eventually made the cut. So Spacey Sketcher has been absolutely insane just for an early turn play. The 2/1 Challenger Snake has been just absolute value. And then also the Equinox card, which Silence a Follower. In a Infinite Mind Splitter heavy meta, just being able to have a 1-mana Silver Bullet. They still have an 8/8, which is kind of rough depending on what deck you're playing, don't get me wrong, but being able to turn off that turn after turn stun has been really, really strong. So number of invoke necessary, and again, I say targeted versus open because of Solari Priestess has this 4, 5, or 6 text with it. Now, in my opinion, this is still the strongest invoke card. Now, I know a lot of people either, aren't running it at all, or they're just running the Lunari Priestess, which is a open invoke if you Nightfall, so meaning you have to play another card first. And I will admit, the Lunari Nightfall is very nice, and it would work on some turns a lot better in this deck, admittedly, because if your opponent open attacks with something, you want to do like a Troll Chant, right, to like save your units and maybe not take damage from something else, but then you can't play Solari Priestess, and it's really awkward. However, honestly, 4, 5, and 6 has the best Celestials for the mid game. And quite honestly, just like sometimes, depending on the matchup, hitting a Golden Sisters late game is still just good enough. Where, in my opinion, it is the best one overall, and what I'm always happy to see in this Aurelion Sol deck. Now, again, it is a little bit awkward, and it does take a little bit of work to get there, but it is still very important. Now, what does this mean for the overall, invoke category? So this is where it got a little bit more interesting, right? With Star Shaping and with Aurelion Sol, this whole 7 or more, all of those cards, the spells that you typically want to resolve, require you to behold a Celestial. Now, again, keeping in mind that means either in play or in your hand. And honestly, when I was first playing this with just Solari Priestess and with just Star Shaping, or these 2 cards I should say, and then like Aurelion Sol as a follow-up, it was kind of hard to still resolve those spells in a fashionable time. Or you set up turns where like you play a Solari Priestess, and you have Star Shaping to give you some big spell. You play the big spell, then you play your thing from Solari Priestess, and then it's like, crap, if anything else hits off Aurelion Sol, or if I just hit like another Star Shaping later, it's kind of stuck in your hand, right? And what I really like about Spacey Sketcher here, especially things with like the Messenger, which is the 2-drop, 2/2 draw card, right? This wonderful backdrop I have here. It's just a card that's easy to stick on their board because your opponent is too worried about other threats that you might have, right? Like a 2/2 isn't really that scary, so they don't care about it. But it's so important for keeping that Celestial trigger, or the Behold Celestial trigger, I should mention, that it just feels like free value. And then, of course, it draws a card, so it replaces itself. And, yeah, Spacey Sketcher has just overall been, again, I undervalued in my own deck, but I still rated it high, so I guess that's like a hit and a miss for me. But Spacey Sketcher has done far more work than I expected. So at least from what we're seeing today, at the time of recording this, I'll have that normal disclaimer. I like all of these as a 3 of. Star Shaping, if you're playing a non-Aurelion Sol deck but still goes late game, sometimes just having that healing is nice. So like you might still play a 2 of, but at least in the context, if you have Aurelion Sol as a win con, his level up just gives it to you for free. Star Shaping has been absolutely insane. Always just run as a 3 of. It feels very, very strong. But, outside of the context of Aurelion Sol, I will say more people need to run Solari Priestess, right? I know it is making some appearance in the Leona decks because it is a Daybreak, so obviously it fits very nicely in those style of strategies, but just for how strong this Invoke is at 4, 5, and 6, I really think it needs to see more play, which again might sound crazy depending on like what matchups you're hitting, because I think most people, at least at the higher end side of ladder, do have 2 or 3 of these main deck in the list are already running, but I have seen some of those Leona and Diana Daybreak, Nightfall, duo synergy decks that actually don't run a 3 of Solari Priestess, and quite honestly, I think they just need to bump it up to 3. They're running 2 right now, I think, in most lists that I've seen, but card's great. The Invokes 4, 5, and 6 are just, the strongest in my opinion, because it's the mid game is often what has much more value than just, slapping down Aurelion Sol. Because if you negate their board, they try to resolve an Aurelion Sol on 10 and don't have anything else for that, they can actually lose the game. I've won quite a few games actually by just controlling my opponent's board. They try to make a big play with Aurelion Sol and then just straight up lose the game because of it. So obviously that's going to come down to the type of deck that you're playing and making sure that you have various outs to it. But I think a lot of this comes down to knowing your matchup and knowing how you need to attack the meta that can really help give you that leg up against the Aurelion Sol decks. Because I have been reading Reddit, Twitter, Discord, what have you. I do see a lot of hate for Aurelion Sol being too strong. And maybe like at some point the Invokes and or Hush, right, might get tweaked a little bit. But quite honestly, the Aurelion Sol decks are late to Masters. Like these are not the decks that people are like spiking off to Masters right away. Now, part of that might be that the average game time is longer, right? I'm sure it's playing some part, but if you look at like overall win rates for high performing Masters, like Nightfall is doing better, TF Swain is even doing better, and part of that's just like what part of the meta they've ran into. And surprisingly, today, it's on the Asia shard. It's Asia, yes, it was Asia shard if I remember correctly. GP Sejuani, hello, ended up making top 10. So kudos, and I forget the player's name, so forgive me, but I think it was Runeterra decks that tweeted that out. So kudos to them, right? Like 0 new cards, just GP Sejuani just being a solid deck, able to grind out people in Masters to hit that top 10 rank. So you love to see it, right? I think Mount Targon, a lot of us are still figuring out where the pieces fit. How does Invoke work? What's the right number? Is Aurelion Sol always safe to play on 10? He's not. And those style of actions we have to get used to, but I think right now it's in a pretty good spot. It's definitely not as bad as Bilgewater on release, I will say. And, to be fair, we don't have the entire Call of the Mountain expansion yet. But again, at least for what we've seen so far, I've been pretty happy with it. And I think it's been a great set, at least for this week 1 impressions. Beyond that, kind of the next tier of this whole deck building principle or progress, right, is interaction to the meta. And this means like any control deck, right? You can't just play a triple ramp, all the heals, 3 of War Mothers, 3 of Aurelion Sol, and just say, hey, I'm going to try to just stick to my game plan and not care what you're doing whatsoever. You're going to lose. It's going to feel really bad, and you're going to lose, more than anything. So kind of where did that bring us, card-wise? And once again, perhaps not surprising, is we could just look to War Mother's list of old and what did they use, what worked, what didn't work, and, of course, you will have to change some of these based on the meta that you're seeing, and Iceveil Archer is a very good example of this. In non-misfortune metas, Iceveil Archer is insane. This wasn't an MVP for me. Somebody was running Darrowing, believe it or not, and well-timed Iceveil Archers just crush them, and, that's just a Frostbite thing in general. Now, if I ran up against let's say, Misfortune Scouts, this would be a very dead card. I would hate to see it, on most turns, and I'd feel very bad because I don't ever get to block anything. And kind of say with the Sentry, right? Only having 1 HP means that it automatically dies to Misfortune's trigger effect. So both of these can be very bad cards depending on your matchup. Now that said, Sentry you're still going to be playing because while you ignore that one portion of the meta, it is still just a draw replacement. And then even Iceveil Archer, you might still say that, we take the loss against Misfortune, but if people are playing a lot of the Noxus aggro decks, well, then you still have to keep it in your deck list just because of how good it is against those style of lists. So keep in mind, you can't just say like, oh, I ran into one Misfortune deck tonight and this means I have to take out these cards. Definitely try to think about like what people might be playing, maybe play like 4 or 5 games what you're running into, and then kind of decide from there. Now, the card that, again, I was right and wrong about, I guess, is Icequake. So I like this card in my Trundle review. I rated it lower, at least for my day one Aurelion. It was in my list at the end of the meta, or the end of the climb, I should say. No shocker there, if you've been following the meta. But early on, I expected a lot more low to the ground, meaning like 2 HP or less aggro decks, especially some of those like elusive strategies where Avalanche would just do more. And well, that wasn't the case at all. Unfortunate for me. So Avalanche was mostly a dead card, or it popped Spell Shields, which was like super cool. And I got some value that way. So it was like Avalanche into Falling Comets. And obviously I could just kill the Aurelion Sol that way. So it still had some use, and where like Icequake, you can't do that. But I think Icequake just overall, being able to deal 3, as I mentioned in my Trundle review video when this came out, 3 is just such a massive number to hit versus the 2 of Avalanche. Like, I know people see this. It's a slow card. It cost 8. But, man, especially when they're on, like, They Who Endures and they have a Callista and they're trying to flip it the next turn, if you just drop an Icequake on them, they probably surrender on the spot. Now, yes, you still have to be the They Who Endure that comes after it, but if you're playing this style of deck, you have Ice Veil Archers to buy you turns. You have the silence that you need right after they play it. I was playing Harsh Winds. It's a little bit of a point. I know other people are playing Harsh Winds, right? Or Sunburst. There's actually a lot of answers that you have to They Who Endures in this region pairing, meaning Freljord and Mount Targon. Or again, just Hush for a turn if they go to attack and just win that way, right? Where, other region combinations might have as many answers, but you still, because you are playing Mount Targon for, Aurelion Sol, chances are you're not that worried about the They Who Endure. You're just very worried about that, Bark Beast, Curse Keeper into Blighted Caretaker turn, right? It just blows you out of the water. And feels awful. I lost a game in 3 minutes on ranked because they got that opener and followed it up with even more gas. So at least from interaction to the meta, I think, again, this is going to go back to realize what you're playing against. I think these 3 cards are safe. I will say, like, these are the 3 that are going to be in my list going forward. Again, kind of at the time of recording this, I played my, 100 games of Aurelion Sol, and for like the sake of content and trying to get more videos out on YouTube, I am going to be shifting my focus to playing other Mount Targon brews, learning them and doing videos on them, and then, climbing up to Masters slowly but surely. So if you're looking for mostly dedicated Aurelion Sol content outside of this video, sorry, it's going to have to wait till we get to Masters, just because I've played so much of it, right, in this past week, and I really want to try out some new cards. But always feel free to stop by on stream, ask me questions. I feel very confident in my knowledge about this archetype in particular, considering ramp is just like what I've always played. And the fact that all of my like day 0 predictions have came true, I feel pretty good about that, and at least my analysis was on point. Lastly, from there, we have the the tutor versus draw argument, right? So with Babbling Berg, you could line up your deck to only draw Aurelion Sol because it's going to be 5+ power unit, or you could play Dragon's Clutch to make sure you're getting your Mind Splitter. Now, a lot of people rated Mind Splitter low at the beginning, and I said it was going to be one of my favorite cards. Luckily, I was right on this one again. But Dragon's Clutch, in my opinion, is just insane. It's a 4th copy of Aurelion Sol in your deck, which honestly might sound crazy, but oftentimes you just need because I have the worst RNG in the world, and I just cannot draw Aurelion Sol to save my life. So Dragon's Clutch has Covenant Clutch, no pun intended, for me during my climb. And what's really important here too, because it can be played off spell mana, it's really easy to line up your turns where you're spending most of your primary mana, playing units, or maybe you have like a troll chant in there you need to play as well, and then just being able to play the Dragon's Clutch off your spell mana and then line up your Mind Splitter turn. So what I really like about this as well, to like kind of go one step further in terms of like which one did I like more than the other, is that Dragon's Clutch also gives you a +2 for Trundle, assuming you have them leveled up, meaning you play the Dragon's Clutch, you get a Mind Splitter Aurelion Sol into your hand. That's +2 attack for Trundle on his trigger. So generally speaking, that 2 extra attack is what's really nice to give you up to 7, or generally speaking 8, because you're going to have at least the Ice Pillar on board, which can then kill things like Leviathan or just get through that Swain that you really need to kill. So Dragon's Clutch, while in my opinion is the better option between these two, and just like the overall, draw versus tutor argument, I really can't understate here how insane Dragon's Clutch has been for me, just for what it does for the deck overall. And I will have, I've been talking about like the deck overall. I just realized I didn't include a picture of it here in the link, but I'll make sure to include a Mobalytics link for it in the description if you want to see my my final version of Aurelion Sol ramp. But just making sure that you're getting Mind Splitter on 8 is just a wonderful, wonderful feeling against a lot of decks. I've been hitting a lot of the, what was it, Taric Lee Sin style of decks, which gave me a little bit of a struggle, honestly. That matchup is really awkward if you don't draw the Hushes, as I found out. But, you know, having Mind Splitter come down just to lock down their Lee Sin feels pretty great. Of course, if they hit the Dragon's Rage, I believe his spell is right. So if he draws another copy, if your opponent, I should say, draws another copy of Lee Sin, turns into the spell, and then they can kick your Mind Splitter. But that's another scenario where Hush has been great because they dump so many resources into Lee Sin early to try to make sure it's lethal that they're going for that Dragon's Kick, and they're trying to hit for like 8, 9, or 10 damage. So if you Hush it, just remove all the attack, and your Mind Splitter lives, because you've only invested a 3 mana with Hush, you just replay it, automatically lock down their Lee Sin again, and they're very quickly realizing that they're out of that, you know, Dragon Kick that they thought was going to be an answer. So you have to play the game a little bit differently in that matchup. You have to definitely play a little bit slower of a game than I'd like to, but it's very winnable. And again, Hush is just really being an MVP for it, to turn off their enablers and turn off their kind of main game plan. So that brings us to the last point. You know, what is my backup? So every, you know, good control deck is going to have something else that their deck can do. Thinking back to like Ladros control deck style of decks, right? You always have that like spicy 1 of Atrocity, or even 2 in some cases, where, you know, Ladros is great for coming down on the board, nuking your opponent's Nexus, but that can be really difficult to get those last couple points of damage. So you have to rely on the Atrocity, or just, you know, if you were playing the PNZ version, Karina would come down, delete their board, let you swing through, right? So depending on like what you had going on for you, it might have been difficult to kind of close out those games. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about any of that. Thanks to Celestials and thanks to the invoke mechanic overall, you just play the game and you get free stuff, which, look, I get it. This is a very frustrating part for players because you have to invoke that, or, you know, you play a weak card first to get a strong card later. That's like how the entire invoke mechanic works, boiled down. But, you know, some of the power level on Celestials is pretty darn strong, right? Like the Immortal Fire, or whatever the elusive bird is called. In this deck, it becomes a 10-6 or whatever it is. That's going to be strong enough to close the game out in 2 turns. Like, I've won a number of games without Aurelion Sol, which, again, you should be able to, just because of the Celestials that we were able to get. Mostly off star shaping, so you get things like the Destroyer and stuff like that. And also worth mentioning here, kind of going back to an earlier point with Spacey Sketcher, just being able to filter out those Celestials early so that you're pumping up your late game, you know, win cons, right? It just feels very strong in what you're doing. So, you know, that's the one thing I'll say. Yes, Celestials can be frustrating to play against and can feel like their power level is a bit too strong just because they have that like extra avenue. And it's, you know, it's part RNG, it's part making sure that you're playing your Solari Priestess, knowing that like, okay, well, do I value the Falling Comets here, or am I going to draw other things that can interact with my opponent? And then I take like Golden Sisters or something, right? Or if you hit star shaping, you got to realize, okay, is it Supernova? Is the removal the most important thing? Or can I close out the game, you know, in a couple turns? So it's really interesting to see how this meta is going to shape up from here overall. But at least, again, my week 1 impressions are very healthy, at least compared to the week 1, I guess even week 1 and week 2, right, of the Rising Tides meta, where burn was everywhere and just ruined the format. So I don't think we're anywhere near burn level of, you know, one deck ruling the format. Looking at what's been getting to Masters and what's been climbing through Diamond, this is one of the best metas we've had. And it's super early. I get it. I should not be making any like grand claims, so I don't mean to, about like the meta is solved and this is why it's good. But it's really diverse. We've seen a lot of decks climb up through Plat and Diamond and now climbing into top 10 of Masters. Again, GP Sejuani of all things, that I think Riot has done a very, very nice job. Again, I think there has to be a shift in the focus because players need to realize that their strategy needs to change based on if they're running up into a Aurelion Sol deck or not, right? Like, even with GP Sejuani, you're going to sequence your cards differently based on playing around the spell shield, going for the GP level up, right? There's so much more that you have to do. And again, it is going to be a very, you know, it's a skill check. That's it. That's all that it is at the end of the day. But at least from what we're seeing and at least how the meta is shaping up, things are looking really, really good from a overall balance standpoint. So again, kudo to Riot for that. And we'll have to wait to see, you know, when we get the other, how many was saying, well, 2 champions for Mount Tarragon and then however many for the rest of them that were missing to have the full complete picture of Call of the Mountain. But again, so far my week 1 impressions are all very, very positive. So with that, it's kind of a breakdown again of the Aurelion Sol deck overall, kind of what I've learned. What did I like, what did I not like, and kind of where is it going forward. Again, I'll make sure to post a link to my Mobalytics in the description so you can see where I ended up with the list overall. And with that, hey, I just made Diamond as of last night of recording this, right? Because, the downside of working full-time and not getting to play as much. But my win rate is holding up so far. So we should be getting back to Masters probably not this weekend because I have other plans, but the weekend after. And then hopefully once we get back to that, we'll be doing more like deck doctor submissions and, meme decks and other fun stuff. But between now and whenever I hit Masters, we're just going to be uploading some videos talking about like, hey, here's what I played. Here's why I played it. Here's what I think does well or doesn't do well in the current format. And then, of course, like 1 or 2 games after it. So bear with me. That's kind of what the next, few weeks are going to, or week 1 to 2 weeks is going to look like. And then we'll get more into the actual breakdown of new brews and other fun stuff that might be happening. So if you like this video and if you want to support more Legends of Runeterra content, please make sure to subscribe and like the video. That helps us out a ton here. And otherwise, don't forget to stop by the stream Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. That's where I upload, more content than just YouTube, because this is one that I can only get to when I have time. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe, make sure to drink your water, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.